So 9.5 weeks ago, these petunia baskets did not look very good. They were straggly and leggy. They were sporadic with their flowers, just not doing very well. So I decided to do a little experiment. So one of them I had trimmed back right back to the edge of the pot. The other one I had left alone, and both of them got extra fertilizer for 10 days. So I fertilized them with a water-soluble fertilizer every other day for 10 days. Then I got back on my once a week water-soluble fertilizer regimen, and this is the result. So if you were to look at these two, which one do you think was the one I trimmed? Which is the one that you think I didn't trim? Well, if you're going based on the size or how far down they go, you're right. This is the one I had trimmed, but you can see this one has caught up to this one quite well. But the other good thing to see is that even with that extra length, we did get extra growth, lots of extra flowers. I mean, there's tons of blooms on these. So I'm pretty happy with the results. I think in the end, what I learned from this one is that I probably wouldn't trim them again. I would just go with that extra fertilizer and go from there, because this one has filled out so nice. I did notice that this one maybe had a little fuller growth along the top. This one kind of sometimes shelves out a little bit. And when I say shelves out, I mean like there's a break in the flowers where you have a little bit more greenery. So that's something to think about. The older growth I do notice is a little bit green, has a little bit of are kind of yellowy, and that's chlorosis, and that's caused by the pH of our water. So because of the pH of our water, the plant's not able to take quite as much nutrients, but everything up here that's new is really dark green. So I think what I might do is give them just a little haircut. And I do that with petunias from time to time. And I think that might be the problem, or solve the problem. If I notice more of that yellowing, I'm going to add more iron to these and make sure that they're getting that, because that'll counteract the chlorosis. So that's my plan with that. This is just one of the experiments that I ran on petunias this year. So I'm going to show you a couple other plants that I had worked with, and just to give you an idea of, I guess, how I like to play with these plants and let you know some of the results, because there might be things that might help you out with the petunias that you're growing. Okay, these petunia baskets might not look like much, but they were an experiment that I ran based on comments that you guys have given me. So it seems like anytime I talk about some of the premium petunias, there's always someone who comes on the comment section and says they're overrated, they're not worth the money. And a lot of times they'll have money-saving tips that they offer. One of them being, hey, a lot of times I just go to the big box stores, buy whatever's in those little 6-packs or 8-packs or 4-packs. They're cheap, they're easy, they bloom all season, they're great, I love them. I didn't always have that luck with those, but it'd been a while since I had tried them. So I went to Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart and bought what I thought were the nicest petunias in those packs that I could find that were not wave petunias. And the reason why I didn't choose wave petunias is because I've grown wave petunias. I know how they are. I wanted to get kind of the cheaper ones, the most basic ones I could find, and these are the results. So these two here were just labeled as petunia. They didn't have any extra information, didn't have any size information. This one here was listed as a pretty grand white petunia, and it didn't have a size, didn't have other information on it. So I didn't know anything about these going into it, and that's one of the disadvantages when you buy some of those containers that don't have a name on it, because you don't know what you're getting. Now, I did later on look up the information on this one, and it is a more compact variety. It maxes out at 8 inches, and then it gets like a foot wide. So each one of these has 3 petunias in it, and each one of them have been doing fine. Like, I've done no deadheading on these at all. And that was one criteria that I had, because if I have the choice between a petunia that I have to deadhead and one that I do not, I'm going to choose the self-cleaning one every single time. And so I was going to see how they did with no extra care. I was very diligent, however, with watering and fertilizing. So I wanted to make sure that they were getting the appropriate amount of water and that they were getting fertilized every week, because that would have made it very unfair. So I was very diligent on that front. And then very neglectful on any kind of deadheading. Now, if I was deadheading, maybe I'd get more blooms. Maybe the plant would be a little fuller, because what I'm seeing is that these are kind of, they're kind of lumpy bumpy, I'm not gonna lie. So they're okay, they're doing fine. They've been blooming continuously, so I'm happy about that. But this was about 8 weeks ago when I had put these in here, and they haven't really grown after week 4. So they got about this size at week 4, and this is where they're kind of stuck. So there's a chance that they might put on a little bit more growth, but I don't really think so. So this is not a bad basket, although up close, it's a little, you know, it's not perfect. I mean, compared to some of the other baskets that I've grown, this is a little, you know, this is on the lower end is what I guess I'm going to say. The other thing that I'll say is that these two tend to hold up pretty good in the rain. These here have a little bit thinner petals, so they tend to kind of get flattened in the rain. And then also the spent blooms, they get like kind of mushy like. So that's something that I don't really like about it. And I suspected that when I got it. Anytime I see these ones with these real kind of thin petals, I always think, oh, that might not be able to handle the rain. Whereas these here have much thicker petals, so they're a little stronger. So that's the status of those. Also, a lot of times people say, well, I just go and grow my petunias from seed, and so I can get 100 petunias going, and I have unlimited supply, and it's super cheap. And I think that is another cheap way to go. But I've never grown petunias from seed, so I'm thinking about it for next season. So if you're one of those people that grows petunias from seed, I'd love to know what varieties you grow, because every time I ask people who leave that comment what varieties you have, very seldom does anybody say which one they is. So someone has mentioned the opera one, and then there was another one that someone had mentioned in the comments, but I think that's it. Like out of all the times that I've said, hey, well, what petunia are you talking about? There's no comment or reply that tells me which ones they grow. So please, in the comments, if you've grown petunias from seed and you've been happy with the results, leave it in the comments, because I really want to know, because if I do try petunias next year, I'm going to make sure and try some of these varieties that people have suggested, because it's going to be better. But you can see these more compact varieties, if you compare them to the vigorous varieties, which I'm much more used to, quite a difference. And I'll show you some of those vigorous varieties. I had mentioned the wave petunias, and I had, for Mother's Day, I had that Mother's Day basket rescue video. And on that video, I had gone in and I picked up a wave basket from one of the box stores. It was like a 10-inch or 9.5-inch basket, and it had 4 plants in it. And I divided it up because I knew that waves probably wouldn't do really well in that tiny container for very long, because they were going to outgrow it pretty quickly. So this is what I ended up with. I have to admit, 2 weeks ago, this thing looked much better. It's going through kind of a rough patch, I have to admit. The salmon colored or coral colored flowers have gotten slimy on me, and I'm not sure what the cause was. I will say, like 2 weeks ago, this was kind of a big high mound, and then it did the spreading that these more vigorous varieties do, where they kind of grow up and up and up, and then the weight of them pulls them down. With a lot of times with waves, you do end up with a little bit of a donut. At that point, I added like an extra dose of fertilizer that week, so I did it twice that week, and I've already seen there's some new growth coming in right in the middle. So I know that this is going to start filling in the middle again pretty soon. But that's my secret, is I make sure I give it a little extra fertilizer when that happens, because I want that new growth coming up, because I do want to get those nice balls of color. I'm going to suspect that these are going to recover, because there's lots of new buds and blooms on it. But these, I've never had a petunia where the buds got slimy. So if you guys know, if is it possibly a disease? Is it possibly some kind of bug? I'm not really sure, but they don't look real good. So, I mean, from a distance, it looks okay. But again, when you get up close, these things look just, I mean, look at that, especially the pink ones or the coral ones, just, they're not really up to par. And the other one looks very, very similar. And this is the only group of petunias that I've had this happen on. Now, we did have some rain, and they did get rained on, but usually, I mean, they got rained on weeks before that too. So I don't know what's going on with this one, but I'm not giving up on it, because I think it's still going to look good. And again, because those blue ones are doing a good job, I think it's still an okay basket, but definitely not as good as some of the other ones I'm going to show you. So I'll show you this next one. This one I have mixed feelings on. So I was in Lowe's, and they have what they call drop-ins. And you buy this pot exactly like this. It has all the flowers in it. And the thinking is that you just take this thing and you just drop it in your container. You don't have to buy a special container. You don't have to even plant it. You just keep it in this pot. I have been babying this thing now for, let me look at what my calendar says. It has been 9.5 weeks. And so when I did get it, this was in rough shape. So I have to give it that point that it was looking rough. I trimmed it way, way back, really far back, down to nothing. And in 9.5 weeks, I have gotten it to look pretty good. I'm not entirely disappointed, but man, these are Supertunias in here. So this is Supertunia lovey-dovey. This is probably Supertunia Mini Vista Hot Pink or something like that. And then there's also a Calibrachoa, a Superbell's yellow in here. I don't know what the breakdown of these plants are, like how many of each one is in here. I tried to do a count when I was doing it, but it was really hard to tell. But it's really like disappointing that this is probably as big as I'm going to be able to get it, because I have been babying this thing for 9.5 weeks. It's okay, but I mean, these are super petunias. I should be getting a little more out of this because this isn't a very big container too. So I don't know. That's just my feeling on it. I'm thinking I might just plant it in a pot and see if I get any improvement. The other thing is I've been having a hard time keeping the leaves really green. So when you look at this, you can see, I don't know how well you can see the chlorosis on some of these leaves. Are they showing up on there? And that's that yellow veining that happens. And I've been given these iron and doing all kinds of stuff, and they're just kind of sluggish. So, you know, this is one of those where it's okay. It looks better from a distance, but up close, it does not look good as the one I'm going to show you right now. So when I rescued that wave basket, I also rescued this Super Petunia Mini Vista basket, and it was in rough shape. The plant was small, it hadn't been watered properly, it was in a tiny pot. They had at least 5 plants in here, and there was no way it was gonna make it in that tiny pot. I put it into this big pot. It's a self-watering pot. Last time I'd shown it, just a glimpse of it in a video, I had talked about how it's shelved, which I talked about with the wave petunia, where it was growing up, and up, and then it gets to a certain size where the weight pulls it down and it starts to cover the pot. And then since then, it has filled in very nicely, so you don't see that shelf. It's still in its little bit of a lumpy, bumpy stage. There's a lot of new buds coming in, a lot of new growth, so we're gonna get back to that nice ball shape very, very soon. But this is completely covering this 19-inch pot. The Super Petunia Mini Vista Scarlet is definitely dominating on this side. When we come over here, you can see more of the yellow and the blue. The yellow's holding its own. The blue's looking pretty small right now. I think that's indigo is probably the color that's in there, but definitely this Super Petunia Scarlet is looking absolutely stunning. I'm so glad I was able to get this one and put it into this big pot. It's been a breeze. I haven't done anything with it. That's all I do is water it. Been really, really nice. Now this is my kind of petunia basket. I mean, the flower coverage on it, the habit, it's absolutely gorgeous. And this one, out of all the petunias that I showed you, has been the easiest to grow. That's all I did was take this 14-inch pot. I put 2 petunias in here, and that's all I do is water it. And I give it water-soluble fertilizer 1 time a week. And this is what I'm getting. I did no trimming, I did no deadheading. I haven't been fussing with this one at all. Whereas, like I mentioned, some of the other ones I've had to do extra work with, or I had to kind of play with. This, no-brainer, super easy. I'm so impressed with it. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised. This is a new one from Proven Winners. It's a Super Petunia. It's new for next season. So it was available as kind of a preview on the Proven Winners Direct website earlier this year, and I saw it and I thought, I really want to try it. I really want to grow it. So I went and I ordered it, and they have, this is the Super Petunia Tiara Blue. They also have a Super Petunia Tiara Pink. When I was ordering, the pink wasn't available, and I had my heart kind of set on the pink because the photos of it look absolutely fantastic, but I figured, well, I'm going to take the blue. I'm glad I got the blue because a lot of times with the blue or the purple petunias, those really dark petunias, they actually sometimes take a back seat. They kind of recess a little bit, blend in with the foliage a little bit, and so you don't notice them as much. This one, because it has that white inside, so it's like purple, then white, and then it's purple again at the throat, it does stand out in a way that a regular purple petunia doesn't, so I'm very impressed with that. And I don't know, this has been very interesting because I didn't expect to like it as much as I do. I mean, I enjoy my Super Petunias, I like them, but this one has been kind of special. Now, the flagship Super Petunia is the Super Petunia Vista. That's like the bubble gum is one of those. That's their really, really big one. This one is not quite as big, but close in size, but it doesn't have the height of that one. It's much more of a trailing variety, and which is, I think, what makes it do this kind of perfect habit where it just kind of keeps spilling over, covering the pot. I have a feeling this is going to keep growing. It's going to get bigger and bigger, but thoroughly impressed with this, and I've had this one for 9.5 weeks. So I planted these just as small quart petunias 9.5 weeks ago. So I've had a good amount of time, well over 2 months for this to grow. So it's been growing just fine, but again, super easy, no work. I'm glad I got this one, and I'm curious to see how the pink one goes. I've seen some people post photos of the pink one, and they're all saying that they think the pink one is more vigorous. I suspect that maybe the pink one is faster growing. This one may catch up to it. It's hard to tell. So I would have loved to have grown them side by side because then I'd be able to really know. But I'm curious if by the end of the season they end up being the same size, or maybe it was just the pinks were just ahead this year. Who knows? But this is definitely one I want to carry next year because it's beautiful, it's easy to grow, and it's pretty impressive. So hey, one to put on the list as a maybe, but ordering them from Proven Winners Direct, it is expensive. Like I spent $10 per plant on these plus shipping. That's more than I would normally ever spend on a plant. But I was just so interested in it. I wanted to see how it goes. So I spent the money, I splurged, and I'm glad I did because I get to show you what it is. It also means that I'm going to be very excited to carry it next year because it really does, it gets the job done. So no brainer for baskets. And I mean, I just can't believe how good this thing looks. It's really great. So anyway, I will talk to you guys all very soon. Hope you enjoyed my little experiments, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. That's kind of what I like to do. So I'll just keep sharing this stuff with you. So see you guys in the next video.